I am not going to stop beating this dead horse because they are not going to stop beating this dead horse. Incessantly, we constantly hear about inanimate object violence. So here is Yahoo News talking about the Louisville bank shooting yesterday. And I want to quote something here from Andy Beshears, that's the governor of Kentucky. And we're going to read it like it should be read, because we need to dispel the myths and we need to cut through the euphemisms that seek to suspend everybody's critical thinking so that they can give up their rights, so they can have more safety from America's greatest death cult, the United States government. And it is a death cult. If you think about it and you look at the studies, over 250 to 300 million people have been slaughtered by their own government, a government those people one day trusted with their safety and with their security and with their rights. They gave away their rights and the government turned on them. Remember that. And this is 250 million to 300 million deaths, excluding wars. When you add wars into that, you're talking about over 1 billion people dead at the hands of government that these people trusted. And it's all in the name of democracy. It's all in the name of freedom. It's never, tyrants never come to you and say, hey, we're tyrants and we're here to take over. We're here to take your rights and we're here to take over the economic system and trash your local currency and your national currency. They never say that. They say, hey, we're here to help you. Like Reagan said, the 9 most dangerous words in the English language: I am from the government and I am here to help. Don't believe them because they never are. It is a death cult. So Bashir says, I want everyone in the city to know that notwithstanding tragedies like today, when multiple people are killed by inanimate object violence, our community will continue to come together. We will find ways to love and support one another and the families and friends who have been directly impacted by these acts of inanimate object violence. And we will come together as a community to work to prevent these horrific acts of inanimate object violence from continuing here and around the state. And how are you going to do that? So that's Andy Beshears from the state of Kentucky. He's the governor there. And here's how the White House responded. And again, I am going to beat this dead horse until it's gelatinized because they will not stop with their propaganda. The government is going, oh my God, another mass shooting happened. What's the answer? Oh, let's carve out some more power for ourselves. Because that's what a background check is. That's what gun regulations are. That's what gun-free zones are. It's the government carving out more power for themselves as they extract and take power from you. And remember, laws do two things, because this is what people are talking about. They're talking about, we need more legislation. We need the legislators that we all don't trust. None of us trust our legislator. I don't care if you're a Democrat, voting Democrat. You don't trust them. You're just going through the motions because you think, oh, it'll be different this time. You Republicans, you people that vote red, you don't trust your legislators. If you do, I really question your sanity. Are you really going to trust them with your security, with your safety, with your money? Are you going to do that? No, you're not going to do that. Do you want your sons and daughters to grow up to be politicians and legislators? No, you don't. You don't want that. Why? Because you're sane. You're rational. You can think your way out of a box and you exercise critical thinking and you love people. And the worst thing that can happen to any society is that more people become politicians and police officers. So Biden weighs in on this, releases a statement condemning the latest mass shooting. And, people are going, well, this thing is fake. It doesn't matter if it's fake. It doesn't matter if it's real. The bottom line is, what is the bottom line? What are they going to try to do? When they take this story and they hyperinflate it and they add all this stuff to it. And by the way, we're talking about CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra, lamestream, fake stream media. Do you believe anything that's coming out of these teleprompter reading corporately funded idiots? No, you don't believe that. Why? Because again, you're intelligent, you're rational, you know what's going on, you know what Operation Mockingbird is. Again, and by the way, you know about the Church Committee as well from 1973 and 74. The Church Committee revealed that the CIA had successfully infiltrated all of print and televised media. That's back in the mid-70s, guys. If the CIA had successfully infiltrated print and televised media back in the 70s, do you think it's worse or better in 2023 right now with all the technology and the way that they can, scour the internet and spy on you through the internet and set up the surveillance apparatus. We've already seen the Twitter files. We know what's going on with FedBook, also known as Facebook, also known as Meta. We know how they get their tentacles in there, and we know how they spread propaganda and misinformation to hoodwink the masses. That's what it's always about. And it's always about carving out even more power for themselves, because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And one thing about people who acquire power, they always want more. The power that they got is never enough. So creepy joke Biden said, "Once again, our nation is in mourning after a senseless act of inanimate object violence." What about spaghetti bowl violence? What if somebody took a huge backpack and went to a mall and went, say, on the third floor, and started unloading all these spaghetti bowls and dropping them 3 stories down on everybody? And just, let's say there was a mass killing done by a guy throwing spaghetti bowls. Would they call that spaghetti bowl violence? 11 people were killed today because a guy on the 3rd floor of Scottsdale Mall was throwing spaghetti bowls down on the crowd below. 11 dead, 19 injured. Spaghetti bowl. We must end. And then there was a rash of this throughout the country. People were going on top of buildings, throwing spaghetti bowls off of the Empire State Building, or going to the largest building in California or New Mexico, and just pummeling people below. And it was a mass slaying. It wasn't a mass shooting. It was a mass dropping, a mass spaghetti bowl dropping. Would they call it spaghetti bowl violence? No, they wouldn't. It would be absolutely ridiculous. Can you imagine the CNN headline saying, "We had a rash of spaghetti bowl violence today. The legislators must do something. They must craft more bills banning spaghetti bowls." People taken to the streets. Spaghetti bowl violence has overtaken our nation. It's ridiculous. A senseless act of spaghetti bowl or inanimate object violence. Jill and I are praying for those killed and injured in the tragic shooting in Louisville, and for the survivors who will carry grief and trauma for the rest of their lives. And again, if this happened, this is a frickin' sad. It's sad anytime something like this happens. Anytime some psychopath goes in there with whatever tool they use to eliminate lives, it's always a sad day. But you should never give away your rights. What did Ben Franklin say? If you give away a little essential liberty to obtain, let's just call it what it is, politically promised security, which never comes, by the way, you deserve neither liberty nor security. We are grateful to the Louisville Metropolitan Police Department officers who quickly and courageously stepped in the line of fire to save others. According to the White House, the president spoke by phone to Bashir about the tragedy on Monday evening. How many more Americans must die before Republicans in Congress will act to protect our communities? As if the Republicans just got off their duffs and grabbed more pieces of fancy paper and wrote just a crazy amount of words on this paper, that all those words on all those pieces of paper and all those thick bills, those legislative masterpieces, if they just crafted more words on more fancy pieces of paper, these things wouldn't happen. That's how ridiculous it is. If you just put more words saying, ban spaghetti bowl violence, we need spaghetti bowl background checks, we need to institute, spaghetti bowl drills in school. That's going to keep us safe. This is a spaghetti bowl free zone. That's how ridiculous this is. And you can't have you want to eat spaghetti, you're going to have to use a plate. You can't have spaghetti bowls in it. But I got a whole cupboard full. Well, if you have a whole cupboard full of spaghetti bowls, because we crafted this legislation right here, you're going to have to turn those spaghetti bowls in. But I didn't do anything. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You want this place to be safe, right? You care about your children, don't you? Then you're going to turn in all your spaghetti bowls, Mr. What was it Diane Franken said? Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in. This is how ridiculous it is, guys. This is how ridiculous it is. For somebody to use a tool to do horrible things to somebody, and then millions of Americans have this same tool, but the government's knee-jerk reaction is we must criminalize those millions of Americans who never did and never would commit a crime with their tool, but we have to ban those tools. And if they don't turn them in, then that makes the people who still possess those tools criminals. 0 cents. Total insanity. It's long past time that we require safe storage of firearms. So what does this entail? How are you going to know if I'm storing it safely or not? Oh, does this give you a foot in the door to inspect my house and make sure that all my firearms are secured safely according to your standard? Require background checks for all gun sales. In other words, get the government's permission before you can have something you have a perfect right to have anyway, as outlined in the Second Amendment. That's not supposed to be infringed, but a background check is an infringement. Eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. Well, how about we eliminate Big Pharma's immunity from liability? How about that? What do you think would happen with all these jabberinos if they did that? You want to start getting rid of immunity, get rid of qualified immunity for cops, and get rid of the liability shield that you got set up for the big farm guy. We can and must do these things now. And then he appeals to the majority as though your rights are dependent on whether the majority agrees that you should have those rights or not. So you can lose your rights if you're outnumbered. Listen to what he says. A strong majority of Americans want lawmakers to act on common sense safety reforms. Common sense gun safety reforms. That's gun control. And gun control is not really gun control. It's a euphemism for what it really is, and that's people control. But I don't care if 99.999% of Americans want lawmakers to act and tell me that I can't have a certain kind of weapon, or that I need to jump through hoops and loops before I can have any weapon at all, or I need to register with the state before I can buy ammunition or whatever. I don't care if it's 99.99%. Your rights are unalienable. They weren't given to you by any man, and they can't be taken away from you by any man, even if all those men are found to be in the majority. You don't lose your rights because you're outnumbered. Instead, from Florida to North Carolina to the U.S. House of Representatives, we've watched Republican officials double down on dangerous bills that make our schools, places of worship, and communities less safe. It's unconscionable. It's reckless. And too many Americans are paying with their lives. So trust the government. We're here to keep you safe. This message was brought to you by Here's the Deal. Do not ever give away your rights for anybody, for any reason. I don't care if you're outnumbered. You have rights. Even if you're the 0.0001%, you've got rights that weren't given to you by those yahoos and cannot be legitimately taken away by those yahoos. Leave your thoughts about this, because it really helps in the algorithm if you leave a comment. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my private email list through my website, highimpactflix.com, and I will see you in the next video.